Clayton, I really want to welcome you to this interview series that I'm putting together for, people who are really struggling in their relationships, not only with others, but obviously within themselves, right? And it's really about connecting to oneself and fixing and healing that relationship. And I'm really excited, Clayton, to hear about your background. And can you share with us a little bit more about who you are and what motivates you to do the work that you do?
Yeah. Well, Lydia, thanks for having me. I appreciate this dialogue and you reaching out and us having some space to unpack this. So I have been working with people directly full time for close to 10 years. I'm on my 9th year right now, working with people, helping them, I would say, find their inner champion, trust themselves, and create relationships and a life that they love. The methods of doing that are through transformative dialogues. I step into transformative dialogues with people one-on-one, and I use a whole host of different types of tools and methodologies to help them tap into that inner authority and be able to really lead their life. It started off with very specific around relationships and breakups. And over the course of the last decade, it's evolved into business. It's evolved into working with people around just personal transformation. And at the end of the day, regardless of what we're talking about, we're working on them. We're working on the relationship that they have with themselves as a foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And also what I'm hearing is that, and for those people who are watching who may feel stuck and they're like in this hamster wheel of like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I keep chasing people away that I want in my life, or I feel like I'm not good enough. What I'm hearing from Clayton is like, this is a transformation. This is something that can happen for anybody. And a large part of this audience really struggles with, like you said, like feeling like they're good enough, and maybe they feel like they're driving away what they really want. And, are self-proclaimed people pleasers. And this is a term that I think we all used to describe people who are, who tend to put their needs behind other people's and, maybe hide behind like a fake smile. And there's like that resentment, and they really struggle to get their needs met in relationship. And so, you talk about turning this anxious attachment into a superpower. And I really want to hear more about that, because I agree. I think this is something, even a sensitivity that you can turn into a superpower. So can you talk more about that?
Yeah. So as a foundational principle, if someone's coming to me and they struggle with people pleasing, or we notice that there's people pleasing tendencies coming into their relationship where, like you said, there's a hotbed of resentment that's occurring. There's a sense of obligation. There's a feeling of being trapped. There's a feeling of not being good enough, not being able to get their needs met. Often what couples with that is the person's typically self-aware enough to see that there's something within them that feels off center. And they may be aware that they're a people pleaser, and the relationship that they have with that part of themselves is not one where they feel like they're an ally with it, but rather they also now, not only are they experiencing some type of dysfunction in the relationship, but they're at the core experiencing a lack of rapport with that part of themselves. And so there's a judgment, there can be a self-loathing, there can be a real hate and rejection of this people-pleasing part, which actually just adds and exacerbates the problems in the relationship, in the intimate relationship. And so when we talk about turning this into a superpower, or anxious attachment for that matter, because a lot of people pleasing comes from an anxious attachment style, what we're doing fundamentally is inviting someone to begin to actually see that the very thing that maybe you are rejecting in yourself is actually a superpower that, when harnessed and applied intentionally and in the right context, can make you a master at relating. And if we don't see that as a possibility, then we're stuck in this frame of like trying to fix something that we think is broken within ourselves. So we're operating under this assumption in relationship that something's wrong with me, I'm broken, which then has us even more so try to get approval and validation from the external source so that we can prove that we're not broken. But if we can come back to a place and say, wait a second, there's a real benefit and gift that I have in being able to actually track other people's needs, have a sensitivity and attunement to other people outside of me and understand what they want and what they need. This is about being able to harness this appropriately. We start to transform the relationship that we have with ourselves so that we can start to show up with more self-love, which then will actually allow us to get more in touch with what it is that we want and need to feel like we can be our best selves in the relationship, and maybe even ask for it at that point.
Yeah.
So I think that saying that it's a superpower is the path to bringing us into a greater place of self-love and deservingness of what it is that we want.
Oh my gosh. And, I love that word superpower, because I feel like what's really missing in society today, especially because, we're a very shame and guilt-based society, is this thing called empathy. And I know a large part of this audience, if not, everyone here watching, really has a hard time understanding what does empathy even look like, or what is compassion really, because maybe they didn't have this growing up. They don't have role models for this. And so, you get to, by really learning how to turn this into a superpower, is to learn how to build that deep connection that everybody's really craving deep down. And you also talk about this thing called being unemotionally available. And this might be a new phrase to this audience. Maybe they haven't heard this before, but if this is resonating with you, oftentimes it's we're not available ourselves for the relationship. And it's all about, you are doing this and you are doing that, and you're the cause of my frustration. Clayton, can you talk a little bit more about what's really going on here?
With emotional unavailability?
Yeah, like what it is, and how do you know if you are emotionally unavailable?
Yeah, great. I mean, in a romantic context, emotional unavailability is I would say it's two things. It's one, the inability to allow someone into the interiority of my emotional experience, meaning that there is a lack of vulnerability, there's a lack of emotional openness of what's really going on with me, what it is that I really need, how I really feel about myself. And I think it's also coupled with an inability to actually progress deeper in a relationship. Oftentimes, a sign of emotional unavailability is that we are attracting people that we're calling emotionally unavailable. So we are pulling into our field a reflection of someone that is actually the experience that we're having within ourselves. An emotionally unavailable partner is a perfect place for us to play the game of being emotionally unavailable, because the emotionally unavailable partner isn't demanding that we show up and are intimate with them. So we get to kind of be on the sidelines and project blame on that other person, say, oh, they're not emotionally available, I'm fully emotionally available. But then why do we continue to hang out and try to change that person or shift them? Typically, it's because if we were to step into a relationship with somebody who was fully ready to meet us and see us, there's something about that actually feels way too scary that we're not ready for.
Yeah. And it's safer to play these games, and it is all games. It's all, one of my favorite books, I don't know if you've read this, is Games People Play.
Yes. Transactional analysis. Yeah.
And, if this resonates with you, check out the book. I remember there was a really profound quote in there that said, in all realness, right, in this world, is that most people are too busy playing games, so that there's this block towards intimacy. And even though it can feel like scary, I feel like it's what we all really crave deep down, and we're going out there trying to find it. And there's this, the game we're playing on not social media, but these dating apps where we swipe and dismiss, disregard and devalue. And it's really like all of this, right, is a projection of what's going on the inside, right? This devaluing, this dismissing, disregarding, is part of these games, right?
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. So, one thing you talk about is the importance of having boundaries.
Yeah.
And I know this word is probably terrifying to some people. I know for me in my own journey as a recovering people pleaser, the thought of setting rules for someone else was terrifying. Clayton, can you talk a little bit about maybe what's missing so that these individuals can start to feel like they're allowed to, put themselves first and give themselves permission to feel safe, or to go find like a better relationship, or to be treated better? Like, what do you feel like is missing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think that if boundaries are occurring as something that seems like it's threatening to a relationship, it's because the idea of boundaries is inside of one's mind built on non-useful premises, meaning that there's non-useful beliefs of what you think boundaries actually are, if you think it's a detriment to a relationship. So oftentimes there's a belief that if I were to set up boundaries, it would be a selfish act. If I was to set up boundaries, it would be a selfish act. If I was to set boundaries, it would be a burden on the other person. If I was to set boundaries, then in some ways it's me telling the other person what to do. And who am I to tell the other person what to do? And so there's this rejection of boundaries because it kind of goes against and maybe the core identity of being a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Like it's just, that's the exact opposite of what I want to do. Because if I was to set boundaries and it creates a negative reaction, or there's negative emotions that surface as a result of that, then that's threatening to the harmony of the relationship. And in my paradigm, harmony trumps everything in relationship. Unfortunately, if harmony trumps everything in relationship, we often don't have a very robust relationship, and we don't have a very authentic relationship. So I would invite one to begin to honor and actually make truth in relationship king over harmony, because harmony can still be on the list, but if we make it secondary to truth, then we're much more likely to begin to fight for truth in relationship rather than just fight for harmony. Harmony will be actually a result that occurs through truth telling and openness and vulnerability. So there's a couple beliefs that I'll put out here that I believe are incredibly useful in someone being able to begin to draw boundaries, have access to beginning to easily draw boundaries when you start to see boundaries this way. Because we could dive into like, well, how do you draw boundaries? What's the language that you use when you draw boundaries? And you could read a book and you can maybe find the language in that. But if it's built on a premise that actually has you still feeling like your boundaries are a burden, it doesn't matter what words you say, because who you're being when you draw them is still going to be one where you're almost apologizing while you're saying them. Like, I'm really sorry to say this, but this is where I'm at. And it's like, let's actually create a set of premises that allow you to be clean and straight with people. So
yeah,
the first belief I'll put out here is that boundaries act as a container that provide a roadmap for your partner to love you. So when I draw boundaries with somebody, I am giving them the blueprint as to how to be with me so that I feel loved and so that I can and feel safe enough to surrender and reciprocate in the name of love with that person. And if I'm unwilling to draw boundaries with people, if I'm unwilling to give boundaries, then I'm not giving them a roadmap. They're not going to know where they actually stand with me. They're not going to know whether they're crossing a line or not. And so if I don't draw boundaries, I actually create a territory where my partner won't feel safe with me.
Yeah, love it. Exactly. And I really want to highlight that real quick is
Sure.
Exactly. Like this is such a problem in relationship, is that there's this feeling unsafe because we're not being authentic, because it's like, it's almost that it almost becomes obvious that there is a problem. It's like there's this elephant in the room and there's something awkward, but nobody's talking about it. And so it's like, maybe there's that feeling like we're walking on eggshells, and like, if I say this, I might lose the connection or someone might get angry. But can you, for the viewers watching, can you see why this doesn't work in the long run? Right.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. And I'll just move into the next one. And I'd love to hear your comments on this one too, is that setting a boundary is actually a powerful investment in your relationship, because setting a boundary is something that I actually do with people that matter to me. Like, I might set a boundary on an extreme case. I might set a boundary with a crazy person who runs up to me on the street because maybe my life is threatened, and if I need to, I will. But for the most part, I'm not running around grocery stores setting boundaries with people. because I don't have a relationship with them. The relationship isn't significant enough for me to be trying to teach everybody how to speak to me and be with me. So if I'm setting a boundary with somebody, it is because the relationship is so significant that I'm willing to take a risk of being vulnerable, stating who I am in that relationship for the other person to see me and respond to it. So it's a total act of love. It's a reflection of how important that person is to me through setting a boundary.
Yeah. I love this reframe. And for those of you viewers watching, right, we're reframing boundaries here. And, I think what may come up for some viewers is like, okay, well, that's all nice and good for me. What if like that person does get angry because this has been the past? Every time I ask for this, every time I request that, this is typically the case. And that's where, it's again, we're stuck in that old paradigm, right? Of I'm the problem in the relationship. And so anything I do is going to be a problem. Anything I request or having even needs is going to be a problem in the relationship. Just going back into what we were talking about as we're talking about reframing boundaries here, is that when you're still stuck in that old paradigm that I'm the problem, then of course setting boundaries is going to be like, well, that's still going to be a problem. But if you can start to see it from your perspective that you're doing this, I mean, yes, for yourself, but you're also becoming a guide for that person so that they can also be in your life. Of course, people pleasers are trying to control everyone else's projections of themselves, which is part of the problem too. So I'm curious what you have to say about that, Clayton. Do you get, I know you're coaching and you're taking people on right now. What kind of message do you have for someone who's maybe like, well, what if I do set the boundary in a loving way and they blow up at me or they get angry?
Beautiful. Yeah. I would say like, what a wonderful ante into the pot where you've created a territory for more truth to emerge, for that person to have an authentic reaction and for you to bear witness to it, right? The relationships that I'm concerned about are the ones when people come to me and they say, God, we never fought. We never fought. Yeah. Our relationship was so good. And what I get curious about is, well, wow, it sounds like there was a lot of stuffing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it sounds like people really, really weren't speaking up, because when two individuals come together, there's going to be a navigation of your values, and there's going to be triggers, and there's going to be times that we suddenly feel like we're being threatened or a core part of us is being attacked. And that's part of being in a relationship. And this is how we actually grow and heal together, is through being able to navigate these. So if I have a belief that my partner getting angry or blowing up is a bad thing, then in some ways I'm not actually being a champion of the relationship, being a container for both of us to heal.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love that. And what I want to emphasize here is what Clayton is saying about, and what I tell my clients is like, yeah, there might be turbulence. There's probably going to be some turbulence, right? Because I know a large part of this audience tries to mind read, right? We try to like, well, what are they thinking about me? And if I say that, they're going to say this and they're going to think that about me. Well, notice we can't mind read. Just notice that, just become aware of that right now, that we don't know what the other person's thinking or what they really do believe deep down. But what we can do is we get an opportunity, like you said, this container to educate.
Yes.
And not, browbeat or make people wrong for what they don't know. And I think me personally in past relationships, that has been like one of the biggest issues, is like we make each other wrong for not knowing things. And what I love is just like this, you're giving an opportunity to educate that other person, to give them that blueprint.
Yeah, I love that. Yes. And there's something to that point that I think is really important too, is that when I say a boundary is an investment in a relationship, what I also mean is a boundary is a commitment to the relationship. So if I'm with a partner and we go through a period where suddenly there's name calling that's happening during our fights, and I realize, I'm like, wow, I have a boundary around that. It's also an internal and external commitment that I'm making in the relationship of no name calling. And I'm committed to that. I'm not saying a boundary of, oh, you can't call me names, but I can call you names. It's also me declaring, here's who I am going to be in the fights when we have arguments and disagreements. And that is no name calling. This is the vibration that I operate at. This is the frequency. And to be in a relationship, I expect the same of my partner. Can we agree to this?
Exactly. Yeah. It's not a one-way
street. Exactly. It's not a one-way street. And so a boundary becomes a commitment. A boundary becomes a declaration to the health of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wanted to say also too, this mind reading piece that I thought you brought up, which is really fascinating, is it's a great thing to notice, because the minute we start to try to mind read, what ends up happening is we divorce ourselves from ourselves. We move into a different center of intelligence. We move up into our mind. We create a mental construct of who we think the other person is to us. We step inside their story. We look through their eyes. We try to imagine what it is that they're feeling and how they're going to respond. And we leave ourselves behind. We disconnect from our desires, from our heart in the maneuver of that. And this is typically happens fast, and it's unconscious. And it's a beautiful strategy that we learned in childhood to do to protect ourselves. And this is about slowing down and taking a different path rather than going over there and trying to figure out what's happening or expecting them to mind read, or for us to be able to mind read what they're doing. We're coming into our heart and saying, well, what's true for me? What do I want?
Exactly.
What do I need right now?
Oh, I love it. Beautifully said. It's sort of like this fantasizing that we often do. We fantasize and we create this concept of who we want this person to be, and then we begin to interact with the concept and this idealized version of the person versus who is actually in front of us, and actually giving them the opportunity to unravel who they are and show us who they are. And oh my gosh, if it's one thing, as a hypnotist working with couples often, and often just the spouses of couples, is this piece right here, is this jumping ahead, deciding who you think already someone is. And then now there's an expectation they need to live up to that. And what would your life be like? What would your relationship start to look like if you let that go? If you did, like, what would it, just what if, right? And you just began to just be present with who is actually in front of you. And I know, Clayton, you have a background in neuro-linguistic programming, and these are all like real-time tools that we can use to really create change in real time. Like you're really literally rewiring your nervous system. And I know we don't have a ton of time left, but Clayton, can you touch a little bit on like the type of tools you use and how they're effective for people who struggle with these things?
Yeah. So you mentioned NLP, and I'll say that NLP is a almost like the spinal column of the work that I do. It's where I've probably put the most attention on the tools that I've gathered over the last years. And NLP is really the study of the structure of the human experience. And it is a toolkit that gives us an access and a way of changing that structure of how we experience something, so that the experience changes, the experience of life changes, the experience of ourself changes. The story of who we are can be updated and suddenly be seen from a more holistic standpoint, which then gives us access to more resourceful states of mind that may include courage, love, acceptance, risk-taking, and the ability to reach for the things that we want rather than contract in life and have us grow smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And this, I'm telling you, like for the viewers watching, hypnosis is a tool for this. NLP is a tool for this. Meditation, mindfulness, like there's so many tools out there so that you can start to kind of, for lack of a better phrase, rewire your body for brand new results, right? Because what this whole interview series is about is like, how can you start to show up differently? And how can you start to attract differently, right? Without having to control other people, control the relationship, force things to happen, make people think things or make people do things, dropping all of that and just replacing it with like you said, updating yourself, updating your life, updating your habits and how your thinking processes. And Clayton, I know you're taking coaching clients on right now. And you also have a free offering, a free gift to this community, 5 secrets to create an extraordinary relationship. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I am taking on some clients right now. I've got 2 spots available, and the free gift is 5 secrets to create an extraordinary relationship. It's on my website, which I'm sure we'll link to below here. And these are just 5 secrets that, and I would say 5 patterns, in terms of marketing, I call them secrets because they're often not necessarily obvious. They're things that can feel hidden and elusive. And so there are frames or ways of seeing relationship that when you operate from this perspective, it makes relationship easy. It makes relationship flow. It makes it more frictionless. And this is just data that I've gathered over the last 10 years working with people through devastating heartbreak, divorces, helping people get back on their feet, get back out there, date, break toxic patterns, and be in better relationship with themselves.
Love it. And we'll put the link below this video so that you can go get that. If you're struggling with this, if this is resonating with you, you feel like you have to force things to happen. You feel like you're driving the people that you want to keep in your life away. If you're struggling with a lot of anxiety and fears around creating connection with people, or you're lacking that intimacy, go check out Clayton's free gift. We'll put a link below this video. Check it out. This is not going to be up for long. Like he said, he only has 2 spots remaining. I've been a fan, I've been a follower of Clayton's work for so long, and it's really just down to earth, very coming from a very grounded, healthy place. So if this is something you're desiring, go get it. Check out his website, ClaytonOlsonCoaching.com, and it's Olson with an O-N, right? So ClaytonOlsonCoaching.com. Clayton, so much. Thank you so much for being a part of this interview series. I know I'm excited about this, and if for the viewers here who are excited about transforming really your relationships and yourself and the way you see yourself and others, thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on here, Clayton.
Yeah, thank you for the questions, the reflection, the dialogue. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.